Hi, this is Michelle Moons with Breitbart News. We are here at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we have Stephen Moore here with us. He is a distinguished visiting fellow with Heritage Foundation. He's got a big debate tomorrow with Paul Krugman of the New York Times. He says he's ready for it, and so I'm going to ask you, Stephen, what you're going to talk about tomorrow. What are some of the things that you're going to cover?
Well, hi, Michelle. The theme of this debate is really capitalism versus socialism, which is a better model for the future. And, I think that Paul Krugman couldn't have a worse time to be defending socialism than now, because we're looking at what's happened with the collapse of Greece and the collapse of so many other countries in Europe and all the financial problems around the world that really were a direct result of governments growing too big and welfare states becoming unaffordable and taxes being too high. And, so I'm going to hit him very hard on that if socialism works so well, why is Greece a disaster? Why is Puerto Rico failing? Why is Connecticut going bankrupt? And there are just so many examples of where socialism now has been a massive failure, and where capitalism, you look at Hong Kong, even the United States, relative to these other countries, it has been much more successful. The other thing we're going to talk a lot about is the states, and, there's red states and blue states. Red states are more capitalist and free market, and the blue states are more, liberal. And what you're finding is, massive numbers of people are leaving blue states and they're moving to states like Texas and Tennessee and Florida and North Carolina. And again, if you're a big defender of socialism, you're going to create a workers' paradise. Why are all the workers leaving those blue states that that do what Paul Krugman says, and they're moving to the states like Tennessee and Texas and North Carolina that do what I recommend? And I don't think he has an answer to that.
Yeah. So you must be anticipating what he's going to say to you, though, even if he doesn't.
Paul Krugman has a Nobel Prize. He's a MIT professor. He is a very smart guy. He just has the wrong worldview, in my opinion. And I think he's going to talk about maybe we didn't do enough borrowing. One of the things I'm going to say is, look, we've had Obamonomics. Obamonomics is really based largely on your policy prescriptions. This is the worst recovery from a recession we've had since, the Great Depression. How do you explain that? How do you explain we're 8 million jobs behind where Ronald Reagan was? How do you explain that we have $2.5 trillion less GDP than we should have? How do you explain that blacks and Hispanics and low-income and middle-class people haven't seen any gains in the last 7 years under essentially your policies? And we'll see how he responds to that.
Yeah, sure. So how are you going to come back at him for what he has to say?
Well, I'm sure he's going to point to countries that are working, like Sweden and Finland and some of these Scandinavian countries, and say, look, they're big successes and they're socialist. But Sweden, I can't get in every country, but Sweden actually has been moving more towards a free enterprise system. They've cut their tax rates. Sweden has lower business tax than we do today. So, I think Sweden is not the socialist country that it was, a number of years ago. But on balance, look, if you look at socialist countries, because Europe is a socialist continent for the most part, and Europe is a disaster. It's a financial disaster. It's losing ground every year. And we don't want to be like Europe. We want to be more like the continents that matter today are North America and Asia. That's where the growth is happening.
Okay, so if you had like a quick, 10-second for 2016 candidates, what do you think they really need to focus on as far as economics?
The Republican candidates?
Yes, Republican.
I think they have to talk about growth. How do we get back to the 3 to 4 to 5% growth we should have? We've been on a less than 2% growth rut. And the second thing they have to do is run against Washington. The corruption, the incompetence, and the cronyism of Washington that is making Washington rich and the rest of the country poor.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Stephen Moore. Been wonderful. Thank you for being with us.
And thanks to Breitbart.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Great job. Take care.